All right. So in the last couple of sessions, we spoke about Azure virtual machine, network interface card, how virtual machine can be accessible, and what is the network security group, and what is the inbound rule, outbound rule, and what is the priority and importance of the priority number in the NSG rule, and the importance of the application security group as well. So today, we also discussed about the connectivity options for the Azure virtual machine, like site-to-site VPN, point-to-site VPN, and connecting to NAT tools, load balancer of NAT tools, and connecting through a firewall. So we kind of covered the theory part on the connectivity options, and today we will try to implement the point-to-site VPN. So to set up the point-to-site VPN, first let us understand the infrastructure requirement. Then we'll try to implement the infrastructure component, and we'll try to establish a connectivity from one of the remote computer to the Azure virtual machine through point-to-site VPN. So let us assume that we have the virtual machines running on the Azure. So I'm just taking two virtual machines in this example, and they are part of one subnet, and we have a one virtual network. So let me put the values here. This is a subnet, and this is our production VNet. Okay, and this is going to be our web server 1 and web server 2. Okay, and we have a remote user who is actually trying to connect to the servers through RDP. So they connect to the servers through to perform day-to-day tasks. Could be if the user is an application engineer, they perform the application related activities like installation of the application, configuring application upgrades, and troubleshooting some application connectivity issues, the performance issues. So there could be various use cases the user can implement on day-to-day basis. If it is the daily system admin or a server admin or a Azure engineer, they have to connect to the servers to perform certain actions. So for that, we are going to establish this secure connectivity. And these virtual machines have network interface cards, and those network interface cards only have the private IP address. We do not allow the public IP for these virtual machines. And we have one energy. The energy allow the traffic within the VNet and between the subnets. Okay, other than these two communication, anything coming from the internet by default it is blocked. So assuming this is the infrastructure that is already exist, now you have a requirement to connect point to set, configure the point to set VPN. For that, what we need to do is we have to create a virtual network gateway. That's the step one. So this is the VNet gateway. And this gateway takes care of authentication, and it will ensure that only the secure communication is routed back to your workloads running in the virtual network. Okay, and so to set up this, and what we need to do is in the client computer, we have to first create a root certificate. This root certificate can be a self-signed certificate or enterprise certificate solution. You can implement it. So once you create a root certificate, you also have to create a client certificate, and this client certificate also is like one-time activity. You just need to create for the first time. So once you create the root certificate and client certificate, you have to export the root certificate. Once you export the root certificate, you get the certificate key, and this key has to be updated in the virtual network gateway. And this root certificate is created and updated in the trusted root certificates, so that the key will be updated here. And when the client certificate is created and when it is installed in the system, so what it will do is it will try to authenticate. The virtual network gateway will try to authenticate with the client certificate installed in the system. So both the root certificate and client certificate has to be configured in the one machine for the first time. So later this client certificate can be installed on any user's laptop or any user's device where they want to connect to this virtual network. Okay, so the what they need to do is, what you need to do is you need to copy this client certificate and install in all the client machines that they need to connect to this virtual network. Okay. So root certificate, we update the key in the virtual network gateway, and the client certificate you have to export and install it. All right. So export, and instead of install, we say import in the systems. Import into the client systems where it needs to connect. So these are the two things that we do it. So once you do this, you will be able to download the VPN client from the virtual network gateway. So we will download the VPN client and install it on the system. Download VPN client and install it on each user machine. Okay, install it on the user machines. So once you install it, you will be able to connect to this virtual network through a VPN, and later you will be able to connect to all the machines um, which are part of this virtual network. All right, so this is what we are going to do it, and I will show you what setup we have completed already. So if I go to this virtual Azure portal, there is no virtual machine exist, but I have a virtual network that is created, and you can see this virtual network name is prod-vnet01, and the address space for this virtual network is 10 dot series, and we have a subnet. This is the application subnet, and within this subnet I'm going to create a virtual machine. So there is one thing called gateway subnet. This gateway subnet will be used by your virtual network gateway. So if I go back to the virtual network gateways, so the virtual network gateway is already created here, and it's up and running. So usually this gateway creation takes approximately 25 minutes to 30 minutes. Sometimes it goes beyond. So the minimum time to deploy this virtual network gateway is 15 minutes approximately. So it might go up to 45 minutes, depends on the the gateway generation you have taken. If it is generation 1, it will take more time. Generation 2 is take little bit of less time. So to create a virtual network gateway, to save this time, what I've done is I did set up this well in advance. To create a virtual network gateway, you have to click on create and provide the gateway name. Let's say this is a point to site VPN gateway. I'm just giving a name as P2S VPN GW. Select the location. This location should be the location of your virtual network and where your virtual machine also running. So I have to choose West Europe, and since it is the point to set VPN, I have to choose a gateway type as VPN. And the VPN type for the point to site is the route based. It is only supported route based VPN. And the SKU have multiple different type of SKUs. The SKUs are differentiated in terms of the bandwidth, the throughput you get for your virtual network gateway. So it's also important to validate what is the SKU and how much it is going to cost for you. Okay, so for this example, I have chosen VPN gateway version 5 or version 4, anything you can choose it. I've chosen gateway 2 for now, and generation 2 is what I've chosen. This is where you are going to specify your virtual network. This is going to be my virtual network where I'm going to associate this gateway. And since the gateway subnet already exists, it is taken automatically. If not, it is going to ask you to create a new gateway subnet. This is mandatory to set up any VPN gateways. So the public IP address is standard. So your virtual network gateway should have the public IP associated. You can provide the existing public IP address, or you can create a new public IP as well. So here we can say, P2S GW or gateway IP address. You can give any naming standard that your organization is following. You can follow the same methods. So if you have multiple virtual network gateways and you want to enable active mode, you can go with this. So this is only for point to set VPN. I'm just going ahead and selecting the disabling this option, and I don't want to configure any BGP as well. So I've selected to disable this option. And once you select this option, just go ahead and create this. So when you click on create, it will start the deployment. The deployment takes some time. As I mentioned, depends on the configuration and it may take some time. So the minimum time it takes is 15 minutes to 20 minutes, and it goes up to 30 minutes to 45 minutes as well. So, so to save the time, I already have this gateway created. That's what you can see here. All right. So if I go back to the diagram, so what I have is I have the virtual network ready and I have the subnet ready. I have the virtual network gateway ready. So what I need is I need to create virtual machines, and I have to set up this root certificate part. Okay. So what I will do, I will go ahead and create a virtual machine here. So click on create virtual machine, and I'm going to choose the production resource group where my virtual network gateway is already created in that. I'm going to say this application VM, and this is in a West Europe location. I don't want to keep any high availability solutions here because this is only for testing, and I'll be using the Windows Server 2016 data center operating system, and the default VM size I'm taking. Since we are going to test the point Site VPN, so I don't want to enable any public inbound ports. And since this is being a test environment, I will choose this standard HDD as a OS disk. And when it comes to the networking, I'm going to choose the existing VNet that I already set up. And when it comes to the subnet, I can only choose app subnet because the gateway subnet is not for the virtual machine deployment. It is only for the VPN gateways. So public IP, I'm going to say none. I don't want to assign any public IPs. I can assign the network security group. I can click on advanced, click on create new, and remove this RDP ports. But ideally, we are not supposed to associate this network security group in the NIC level. For the sake of example, I'm just creating this energy and associating with the NIC level. So that's all with the VM configuration. We can go with the default options, and we will start initiating the VM creation operation. If the deployment is in progress, then we will proceed with the next step of configuring the certificates and exporting them, installing them. So by the time the virtual machine will be created. All right. So let me start the process of creating the certificate. To create the certificate, we can use multiple methods. There's a makes it option, and they can use that tool, or you can use the PowerShell as well. So I will show you where you can find the steps. If you type Azure configure Azure Point to Set VPN, and this is where you can find some information about how, what are the gateway types, what is the difference between each and every gateway type, and what is the estimated cost as well. Then if you come down here, you will see an option, configure point to site VPN using the certificate based authentication. That is what we are going to follow currently. So what steps you have to follow and how to configure, you have all the steps. You can go with the Azure portal option instead of going with the PowerShell option. Click on portal, and if you look at the steps here, what steps we are going to follow: create a VNet, create a VPN gateway, generate the certificates, and add the address pool. This address pool will be used to allocate the IP address after your device connected to the VPN. So likewise, you have multiple steps you have to follow, and you can follow step-by-step process to set up this environment. So we have done almost all the setup. Only thing what we have to do is we have to create the certificate and export and install it. So when it comes to the certificate, you have a generate certificate option. Can generate the root certificate and client certificate here. You have the two steps available. With the two steps, you have two solution, enterprise certificate solution, and you can create a self-signed root certificate. So what we do is we'll go with the self-signed root certificate, as this is a test environment. And within the self-signed root certificate, you have tools like Windows 10 with the PowerShell. If it's a Windows 10 or later operating systems, you can use the PowerShell instructions. If you don't want to go with this PowerShell, you can also use MakeSet tool. Using the MakeSet tool, you can create a self-signed certificate. So the same thing with the client certificate as well. You can follow the same instructions. You can use the enterprise certificate or self-signed root certificate. So we'll go with the Windows 10 and with the, our later operating system with the PowerShell instructions. So if you open this in another tab, the link, so you have the instructions here. Create a self-signed root certificate. This is step one, and this is the script that will create a root certificate. And you have the script for creating the child certificate or client certificate as well. So this is the certificate to create a child certificate or client certificate. So let's go ahead and create this. I have opened the PowerShell in my laptop, and I'm going to copy this. I'll just go ahead and create the root certificate. So let me copy this script here. Okay, this is for creating the root certificate, and you can see the name of the certificate, P2S root certificate. And this script is creating a certificate with the encryption algorithm as 256, right? So when you are exporting the certificate, or when you're trying to install your VPN, so the VPN client which you are which you are actually using, right? So that should also match this algorithm. Otherwise, it gives you an error saying, okay, the certificate could not be found, which is matching the algorithm, right? Which is matching these VPN client or VPN requirement, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to execute this. This is going to create a root certificate, and I'm also going to run the so script for creating this client certificate. We also say it as child certificate as well. So it is created, and it is created in my current user, not for the entire computer. It will be stored in the my user certificates. So that's why once you create this, you have to search for manage user certificates in your system. So when you do that, you will see this certificate manager window. You have to click on the personal and expand the personal, and you go to the certificates. And in the certificate, you see child certificate and root certificate. So let us export the root certificate first. Right click on your root certificate, go to all task, click on export here, click next. And since it is a root certificate, we do not wish to export the private key. So let's not select that. We should not export the private key. And here you have to select the file format as base64 encoded x509, and select the location where you want to export this. So here I want to export into this folder. First of all, let me just delete these existing data. Okay, I'm going to say this is a root certificate, or I would say P2S root set, and save this. All right, so the export is successful. I'm going to do the similar operation for child certificate or a client certificate. Click next here. And since it is a client certificate, we have to export the private key and go with the default options here. You don't need to make any changes. And this one needs you know a password. You will be using the same password when you are installing this client certificate in any user's laptop or a user's device. And since we have chosen 256 AES based AES 256 based algorithm hash algorithm for encryption, so let us choose the same one here when you're exporting this certificate. Let's click on next and browse this one, and I'm going to say this is a client certificate. I would say P2S client set, and click save here, next, and finish this one. All right, everybody, so this is the certificate creation and export is successfully completed. Even if you go to the trusted root certificate authorities, you can see those two certificates will be there. Let me say point to site. Okay, it's not loading here. So it should be here. We'll check the trusted root certificate authorities in a moment. First of all, let's go ahead and install this client certificate. So training materials, pointer set documents. This is where we have our root certificate and client certificate. For the root certificate, you can go ahead and open with the notepad. And this one is here. What I need to do is I have to copy this root certificate key, and I'll go to the Azure portal, and I'll go to my virtual network gateway, which I created, and go to pointer set configuration, click on configure now. Here I'm going to choose the SSTP tunnel. You can choose any one of this tunnel. All these tunnels are supported. OpenVPN is for, I think it's for Mac, IKE, and other versions, other tunnel types. It supports the Azure AD authentication with the multi-factor authentication enable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose SSTP, which is the secure socket tunneling protocol. So which establish the secure connection to your virtual network through this secure protocol, or through this tunnel. So here I'm going to choose the Azure Radius certificate authentication, Azure certificate authentication, and I'm going to paste this public the key of root certificate key here. I'm going to say this is the root certificate. And this is the address pool that you have to specify. The address pool, basically, after your machine is connected to the VPN, you are going to get an IP address from the this VPN gateway. So the address what you get is from based on this address pool. You can give any address pool. It's not that you have to follow this. It's up to you. Your organization policies. What should be the address pool you want to follow it. So while this is saving the configuration, what we can do is we can go ahead and install the client certificate. So to install the client certificate, click next here and provide the password here. Whatever the password we have used, click next and install it. All right, so this is how you import or install the client certificate, and which is successful. We didn't see any problem or any errors. And if I go to my virtual machine, I think it was created successfully. While this is saving the configuration, let's go ahead and check the virtual machine properties here. So the virtual machine have the private IP address, but doesn't have the public IP address. If I go to the networking, you see the energy associated, and that is associated NIC level, which is supposed to be on a subnet level. That's fine as it is testing, but in the production, you need to learn what is the process you're following to associate this NSG rules. Okay, so ideally, when we try to connect to this machine, it shouldn't allow us to take RDP. So I will try to connect and see if that works. So we haven't established any VPN connection so far. I'm just trying to see whether it will connect or not. Technically, it shouldn't be, because the private IP cannot be resolvable over the internet. So it should be connected through VPN. So this is denying the access. So you can also check one more thing. You can go to Network Watcher. If it is enabled, let me just click it, check it quickly. And in Network Watcher, you have something called IP Flow Verify. Select your virtual machine, and this is going to select your virtual machine network interface card. And local port can be, I think it's okay, 3389 for RDP. And remote port, let's say it's my IP address, my system IP address. I'm going to say what is my IP address. So this is going to be my public IP address. So I will just quickly check from this IP address whether connectivity is allowed or not. So this is denied. This is denying the access, from the internet. So just since we have some time, I just brought this window here just to show you how Network Watcher is going to help you in real time in case if your application team saying that they are not able to connect between the application to database or database to application or any other virtual machine that is running on the Azure, what you need to do is you need to go ahead and select the virtual machine and the network interface card. So you need to ask from which IP address they are trying to connect, provide that IP address and provide the port number and click on verify IP flow. So this will give you the results like which rule is allowing the communication or denying the communication. So this how you isolate the problem. Okay. So since it is the deny all inbound is in place, that's why you're not able to connect to the virtual machine or the internet. Even though you have a low rule, your virtual machine do not have the public IP address, you cannot connect. So I just want to show you this, how we can utilize this network watcher. So this way we can just go and check it out. All right. So now if I come back to this, the VPN gateway configuration is saved successfully. And I'm going to download the VPN client into my system. So it takes some like couple of seconds. Sometimes it take a minute to download. So don't cancel this operation, or don't think that there's a problem. So it generally takes some time to generate the VPN client, and it takes some time to download as well. You can see here it's downloading. It's downloading the zip file. I'll just copy this zip file or extract to the same location. All right, if I maximize this, you can see these are the files what you have it. So this is my system is a 64-bit operating system, so I'm going to choose the 64-bit compatible installer. I'll run this as administrator and run anyways. Now it's giving you an option. Do you wish to install a VPN client for the specific virtual network? So this is a virtual network where I have configured the point to Site VPN. So I've just installed the VPN, and to test the VPN in your system, just search for the VPN and it will give you the VPN settings. So this is the VPN setting. I have it, and you can see there's a connect option. I click on connect. When I click on connect, it's going to give me a connect option. When you click on connect, it's going to connect to the VPN, and it will try to authenticate with the Azure Virtual Network Gateway. Since we installed the client certificate in my system, so the client certificate was created in the same system here, but in case in future, if you're using this client certificate in any other system, right? So it has the same, since it was created in the system where your root certificate was created, they both are, created with the trusted root certificate, system. So that's why you will be able to authenticate successfully. In case if it is failing, so which means there is some misconfiguration in our setup. Either we have not chosen the right algorithm, or encryption algorithm, or there could be some issues with the our configuration. Let's go ahead and try to connect to see what will be the error output. So this is successful. We didn't see any problem. It's successfully connected. You can see the VPN status is connected. Now I will go ahead and try to connect to the virtual machine through IP address. I'm going to say, you can see guys, I'm able to connect to the VM through a private IP address. I'm able to RDP to the server with the private IP address. All right, so this is how you connect to your virtual machine, which is in Azure, through a private IP address. And let me go back to the virtual network gateways. If you want to start monitoring the logs, like how many connections are established, what is the bandwidth is being utilized, you can always go to the logs and try to export these logs to a log analytics workspace first. Then you can run these queries. You can run the custom queries to fetch the information. But however, you can go to metrics section here, and in the metrics you can just search for the P2S. You can see the gateway P2S bandwidth, how much bandwidth it is being utilized right now. It just established, you don't see information, and you can see the count. It's not giving much values. It will take some time to reflect here, but definitely, ideally you can come here and start looking at the information. Okay, and this is about the pointer set configuration and how we configure it and how the gateway is going to play a major role here. You can also see the ingress and egress, how the communication, how much bandwidth is being utilized, how the communication flow is happening. So those things you can validate from here. All right, everybody, thank you. Thanks for your time. In the next video or next session, we will talk about how we can connect uh, virtual machines on Azure. If you have virtual machine spread, in a different virtual networks, let's say VNet 1, VNet 2, VNet 3, how virtual machines can talk to each other, when they are in different VNets. Do we set up a virtual network gateways again between those VNets, or do we have any other solution in place? Thank you.